As Ark scaled the Harrowell Mountains, he used his foraging skill to gather all the grass and fruit he could see, cramming them in his bag. It was so he could test out his newly learned survival cooking. As he'd expected, when he arrived at the cave it was crawling with mice again. Because he had cleared the mice swarm before, he was able to recover 2 stat points in just 1 hour. However, his satiety was down to half and his health recovery rate was falling. It was time to use his newly learned skill. Well, shall I just put this and that in and mix it up? Ark rummaged around his bag and put mushrooms and some strange-looking grasses in his pot. With the survival cooking pot, there was no need to make a separate fire. All you had to do was put in the ingredients, and everything would be automatically heated and food would be made. He added water and after about 1 minute, an explosion suddenly erupted from the pot. You have failed survival cooking. All the ingredients have been consumed. Even after that, he tried again and again with different ingredients, but he just kept getting the failure message. Finally, with his 7th attempt, he completed a soup that radiated a fragrant smell. You have successfully used survival cooking. This is a dish made with the use of land fruit and cochrane. However, without personally tasting it, there is no way to tell what kind of dish it is. After confirming its taste, the recipe and its special effects will be automatically recorded in the cookbook. Ark quaffed a sip of the soup without a second thought. There was a sharp feeling accompanying the food down his throat and, suddenly, his vision yellowed. The strength from his body was sucked right out. As his back helplessly twisted, his head struck the floor. What's going on? You have been poisoned with a paralytic poison. The food you have made using survival cooking is fragrant poison soup. The effects of being poisoned are paralysis, a decrease in satiety and you cannot move for 10 minutes. It's better not to make this soup. Holy cow, so this was what it meant by dangerous. Then didn't that mean that he'd have to suffer these kinds of effects every time he made a new dish? Fortunately, he had already cleared all the wolves and mice in the area, but if he had haphazardly made the dish and eaten it, he might have even died then and there. After groaning and moaning for 10 minutes, Ark was finally able to stand up. And after shuddering, he tore into the wheat bread he had brought just in case. Damn, no wonder he taught me this so meekly. After all, life was not that easy. What the hell should I do with that mouse bastard? Hyun-woo's mind was entirely filled with thoughts of the demon mouse. It had already been 2 days since Creighton had updated the quest. During the past 2 days, he had gone into the cave dozens of times, but he gained nothing. The cave's structure was complicated, but in the end the roads all converged into one place, the lair of the impudently resistant demon mouse. He had also thought about luring the demon mouse to a different place and going in. However, the demon mouse didn't move an inch from where it was planted. In the end he just wasted time in a state where he couldn't do anything. All he managed to do was to restore his cut stat points. Is there really nothing I can do but to give up like this? Hyun-woo puffed out a sigh. The deadline was until tomorrow afternoon. But since he had to go to work in the day, if he couldn't finish this up by tonight, the quest would be cancelled and the soldiers would be on the move. The room for Hyun-woo to claim his rights would disappear. A shriek burst out from within the warehouse. It was Young-hae-sun, the night university student who worked part-time at the mart. Though she was smart enough to earn a scholarship, the reason why she was at a night university was because of family circumstances. He hadn't heard the details, but it seemed like a tough situation. After being awakened by cold reality, Hyun-woo had become a cynical person. He didn't even get along with his coworkers at work. There were times when he'd been cursed at for that kind of personality. Still, he wasn't like that to everyone. To the few people who truly worried about him, Hyun-woo also treated them with sincerity. No, could it be that it was their reaction to distance themselves from anyone they couldn't use? He had cared about those kinds of exploiters more than he needed to. In this case, Young-hae-sun was suffering through a plight like his own. After learning about her family situation, he had taken care of her as if it was his business too. He had taken responsibility for her mistakes, and sometimes he gave her sodas that he himself hadn't bought and drank for many years. If he'd had a little sister, it would be that feeling. His consciousness abruptly awakened. Hyun-woo rushed to the scene. "Hi son, what's going on?" "Mouse, a mouse." Hae-sun, who had collapsed on the floor, pointed to an area as she trembled. As he turned his eyes towards the area, a baby mouse quickly escaped in between some boxes. Hyun-woo watched the mouse with annoyed eyes and muttered, "Damn, mice are a problem whether it's here or there." "What? Are there mice at Appa's house, too?" "No, there's something like that." As Hyun-woo cleared away the boxes to find the runaway mouse, Hae-sun was appalled. Don't do that. What are you going to do if the mouse comes out again?" "It has to come out so I can knock it down." "Appa, aren't you even afraid of mice?" "Scared? Of mice? Hyunwoo laughed. To be sure, in the past he would have been a little scared. These days, there weren't a lot of chances to see a mouse. However, now he felt no difference between a mouse and a fly. New World's mice were more realistic than reality. He had killed 10,000 of those mice in the village and had killed thousands of them today at dawn. In addition, he was currently waiting for an opportunity to kill the demon mouse. Knocking down one baby mouse was no problem. Just wait. I'll thrash it right away. Don't do it. I don't want to see it again. There's nothing in the world scarier than mice to me. I'm afraid just thinking of mice being here. I think I'll have to tell the owner right away and at least sprinkle some rat poison. It was then that Hyunwoo, who was cleaning up boxes, flinched. Hi-sun was startled and asked with a shaking voice. What's wrong? Did the mouse come out? Hi-sun, what did you just say? What? That we've got to put out some mouse poison. That's it. Hyunwoo shouted while clapping his hands. Why didn't I think of that? It'll be simple if I do that. Hyunwoo suddenly turned around, grasped Hi-sun's hand tightly, and shook it enthusiastically. Thanks, Hi-sun. Thanks to you, I've finally found the way to resolve this. What? As Hyunwoo suddenly grasped her hand and shook it, Hi-sun turned tomato red. Who? You doomed mice bastards. Today is the day you bastards die. Ark had a satisfied smile as he looked at the bubbling, boiling pot. The tasty-smelling, strongly aromatic food was Ark's masterpiece, the fragrant poison soup. Ark stored enough of the completed soup into some pouches and entered the cave. Thanks to the repeated attacks of Ark and the wolves, the cave was already mostly depleted of mice. Then, when he reached the innermost part where the demon mouse was holing up inside, a great number of mice rushed at him while making menacing noises. Ark roared and fought the rats with his sword, and entered further inside. Within the darkness, the red light sparkled. He had seen it so often that it didn't even occur to him to be scared. They were annoying, flashing eyes that said the demon mouse was there once again. Thinking the demon mouse was a hindrance, he went forward. Don't glare at me like that. Today I've come to bring you a present. Ark strode confidently to the demon mouse, then grabbed and threw the pouch. The demon mouse reflexively swung its front paw at it and tore a large hole in the pouch, which spilled the fragrant poison soup. The demon mouse hesitated for a bit. However, no matter how large a mouse was, it was still a mouse in the end. There was no way it could go against its nature. After crinkling and darting its nose in and out, the demon mouse licked the soup. On the outside, poisonous mushrooms are beautiful. The fragrant poison soup also appeared harmless from an outward glance. The smell was incredibly good, and the taste was also all right in its own way. The soup must have been to the demon mouse's liking because, after eating it once, it thoroughly licked the floor. The other rats had also fallen for the seemingly harmless exterior of the soup and swarmed around. That's right, eat lots. Ark threw the rest of the bags with a pleased expression. Soon afterward, the fragrant poison soup finally took effect. The greedily lapping small mice convulsed and stretched out. Then, the demon mouse must have sensed that something was wrong, because it cried out with a sharp sound. But by then, it was too late. His trump card cooking was already taking effect in the demon mouse's stomach. The demon mouse stumbled around and limply collapsed on one side. Belly up, its 4 legs pointed towards heaven, and started to tremble. Kikiki, you high and mighty mouse shit. You're no match for me. Then, shall I take a look at whatever you've been hiding? No, I should get my revenge on all the times I've suffered first, right? Ark hummed a song to himself as he approached the demon mouse. Then, in front of his eyes, a terrifying claw suddenly shot out at him. As Ark instinctively pulled out his sword and raised it, his hands shook. How could this be? Ark's face went pale. The demon mouse he had thought was completely paralyzed had swung its front paw at him. Something was wrong. Ark urgently turned his body to run away. However, the demon mouse had already blocked half of the exit with its body. Damn it, am I going to die again? It happened when a hopeless expression surfaced on Ark's face. As it stepped toward him, the demon mouse breathed hoarsely and wobbled. No, the drug is working. It's just that in comparison to its body mass, the drug dose was too small, so the effect is weaker. Ark, whose thoughts had been racing, gained a light in his eyes. New World wasn't a game where you could simply hit and slash anyways. How well he could handle a fighting situation was also important. So, there was no reason why he couldn't handle a demon mouse that had consumed a paralyzing drug and couldn't properly steady its body. In addition, Ark was already at a state where he had achieved level 10. Alright, then even if I die, I'll see this to the end. Ark brandished his sword and began to attack the monster rat. Maybe it was the effect of his level ups, or because of the paralysis, but his attacks were received differently than before. Every time Ark swung his sword, blood spurted out and the demon mouse staggered. However, Ark didn't hurry. The drug effect lasts for 10 minutes anyway. There's no need to rush. Ark circled around the mouse and while ceaselessly thrusting his sword. The demon mouse brandished its front paw several times, but it lacked the power from before. Ark was usually able to slide past the attacks without difficulty. However, the system was set up so that avoiding every attack was impossible. As time passed, the injuries on Ark's body grew and his health fell. After 5 minutes of attacking, the demon mouse's body turned reddish. It's in critical condition. I can see the end at last. The critical condition was a phenomenon that appeared after the health was down to January 10th. Ark pushed the demon mouse with more boldness. But when his victory was almost assured, the demon mouse suddenly howled and sprung to its feet. Its front paw flew towards him with a speed incomparable to before. The hell, what's going on? Ark barely managed to block the attacks and looked at the demon mouse with a devastated expression. There were still 3 minutes to go until 10 minutes was up. But the paralysis must have completely worn off because the demon mouse was charging at him with full speed. With one blink of the eye, Ark had been forced to go on defensive. It was too much to defend against, let alone attack. He saw his health dropping each time he blocked an attack. After blocking about 10 attacks, the sword shattered. The rusted iron sword's durability has reached 0 and it has broken. Damn it. At last, even the sword he'd believed in disappeared. His remaining health was 23. Ark hurriedly downed the health restoration potion. However, the demon mouse didn't miss that action and struck out with its front paw, hitting Ark's chest. Fortunately, since he had used the health potion, his life was barely saved, but the situation was grim. Like the demon mouse, Ark's body entered critical condition and his body became red. Damn, what kind of situation is this? As he dodged the front paw that kept flying at him, Ark exploded in rage. Now he could only endure one hit, at best. If a second hit flew out at him, his cold head would undoubtedly hit the floor. No, that can't happen. If I give up here, then I have to give up this dungeon. If I'm to die, then I might as well bite the bullet. You damn mouse shit, I'll take you down with me. Ark flung himself at the demon mouse. The front paw flew out and smacked his chest, but Ark didn't withdraw. With all his strength concentrated on one hit, his fist struck the bastard's forehead. With your undying will, you have found the demon mouse's weakness. You have dealt a fatal blow. In that moment, along with the flashing message, the demon mouse's movements just stopped. The demon mouse reared, heaved a steaming breath, and collapsed with all its limbs splayed out. Then, the demon mouse's appearance slowly turned transparent. With that, his situation became clear. It was Ark's victory. Is this it? As if to confirm his thoughts, there was a pleasant sound that accompanied his one level up. His legs belatedly began to tremble, as though he had cramps. As he struggled to raise his head, his life was at just 2. While on the verge of death, in critical condition senses his attack power and chance of critical hits had risen. In addition, his hand-to-hand combat skills hit chance and evasion added up so the damage he'd taken was a minimum. He was able to drag out the maximum damage for a miraculous victory. Now isn't the time to be standing around. Ark, who was absent-mindedly staring at the monster rat for a brief time, suddenly raised his head. There were still 100-odd mice still left in the cave. If the paralysis wore off on the mice while his health was at rock bottom, he'd be finished then and there. Ark straightened and glared fiercely at the mice. Hey, you little mice shit. Shall I make you pay for all suffering you caused? Fear flashed into the eyes of the shivering, convulsing mice. Then, shall I take a look at the spoils? Ark, who had completely trampled and killed all 100-odd mice, checked the spoils the demon mouse had dropped. But his expression quickly turned to one of disappointment. The demon mouse he'd finally killed after escaping the throes of death multiple times hadn't dropped items that were as good as he'd hoped. There was only a thick leather and a worn sword. Black bear mouse leather, ingredient, the leather of the demon mouse, who watched over numerous mice inside the mysterious cave. It is strong enough to block a decent sword, and its ability to block the cold is excellent. It can't be simply used, but if it is processed well, it looks like it can make quality armor. Armor, this looks pretty useful, huh? Corroded sword weapon type one-handed sword attack damage 1 to 4 durability 20/20 weight 15 usage restriction none the sword of someone the demon mouse ate. It is so corroded that its original form is hard to discern. It's hard to expect much attack power from this sword. I guess I can't use this. Ark shook his head, crestfallen. Even the rusted sword had 5 to 8 attack power. The corroded sword was much weaker than that. But it was too early to be disappointed. There was still the dungeon's treasure that the demon mouse had protected. With high hopes, Ark went to the back of the cave. However, even when he'd arrived at the dead end, he couldn't see a worthwhile item anywhere. What's this? Surely that's not all. Ark muttered with a dumbfounded face. Then, as he was turning to go, something caught on his foot. He looked down to find a slate with a chipped corner. When he lifted the slate, the information window popped up. You have acquired a mysterious slate. The quest information window popped up. The secret of the mysterious slate: you have obtained the slate the demon mouse was guarding in the cave. It is an enigmatic slate containing a secret. The surface is covered with unknown characters. It appears that this is the item the dead person in the entryway was looking for. It would be good to deliver this to whoever needs it. Difficulty: F, a quest item. Then is this connected to another quest? If that was the case, then this wasn't a bad ending. It was a quest that linked with the original, after all. The task was from the single story of the linked quests. Though it would take a lot of effort and time, there were many cases of people resolving them to the end and earning a high-level item. It was too early to throw away his hopes on getting rich quick. What did you say? Did you say that you really got rid of the demon mouse? A surprised Creighton asked while looking at Arkansas. Ark nodded grandly and showed him the leather. If it's this big of leather, then it's definitely the demon mouse. Very impressive. You have dealt with the demon mouse. The quest is completed. With a drumming sound he hadn't heard in ages, the quest was completed. Your level has risen. His level went up by 2 at the same time, bringing him up to level 13. Since he had resolved a quest that was impossible for a level 10 player, the rewards were that much greater. That was not all. As a reward, Creighton gave him 10 gold and told him to go to Hansen. As soon as Hansen saw Ark, his spittle flew as he congratulated him. I heard the news. You accomplished a truly huge feat. Since you gallantly stood against the colossal demon mouse and knocked it down, I can safely call you Mouse Master. You have received Haroon Village's Elder Hansen's title of Mouse Master. You have now become an expert at dealing with mice. When fighting mice, your attack power increases by 50%. In front of mice, the chance of landing a critical hit rises by 40%. Because you have become a master at fighting mice, the chance of evasion rises by 40%. Asterisk, the received title gives a bonus increase to all stats by 1. Asterisk, fame increases by 100. As a mouse master, the skill Spirit of the Cat has increased to intermediate. Spirit of the Cat, intermediate. Active, the cat's roar and flashing eyes have become more bloodthirsty, making mice and other similarly small monsters tremble in terror. Paralysis for 1 minute. Attack, defense, and fighting morale decreases by 20%. All mice, 50% effect applies to smaller monsters. Mana consumption, 100. It was an additional bonus, awesome enough to make him faint. Well, to complete the quest with normal methods, the user would have probably had to be at least level 15. Since a level 10 player had finished the quest on his own, he more than deserved the reward. Along with that, it was linked to another quest. This was the definition of an opportunity. I may even have to thank Andal and Bulma. If he hadn't been used by Andal and Bulma, Ark wouldn't have even considered doing 300 mice-catching quests. Thanks to enduring the lost stat restoration, point by point, an opportunity had opened up for him. Of course, he didn't really have any thoughts of thanking them. Earning this opportunity was the result of Ark's own vicious perseverance. The desire for revenge that he harbored towards those bastards hadn't softened at all. Take this as well. What is that? Granny Johansson, who you often took care of, passed away a few days ago. However, before she died, she did away with the little fortune she had. I was holding on to what she said she wanted to leave to you. It should be about 30 gold. Though she was an NPC, hearing that the person he'd personally taken care of had died made his heart heavy. Of course, despite that, Ark was not one to deny the offered money. It was his duty to fulfill the will she had left. Anyway, with this, Ark received a bonus of 12 stat points at only level 13. In addition, though he was at a level where he should only be getting copper coins as rewards, he had received a generous sum of money. After Ark pocketed the money, the slate suddenly came to mind and he asked, "Grandpa, do you happen to know a Viscount named Haverstein?" "Of course. Sir Viscount Haverstein is none other than the Lord Jackson who governs this district. But why are you asking me this so suddenly?" "It's nothing. I'm leaving, then. It's simple. I've completed gathering information on the next quest. Now I just have to prepare for my journey." With an open smile, Ark found the smithy. Then, he extended the demon mouse leather and requested the manufacture of leather armor. He also left the corroded sword in their care. It was because he had no replacement for the rusty iron sword that broke. After placing the item in their care, and waiting a day, he went back to reclaim it and the repair on the armor and sword was complete. With an examination of the resulting items, he found the initially disappointing spoils transformed to what he'd originally expected. The smithy owner spoke with a boastful expression. "Since it was your request, I used the best of my skills. Black bear mouse leather armor, enchanted, armor type leather armor defense 40 durability 90/90 weight 20 usage restriction none armor made from the leather of the demon mouse that was watching over the mysterious cave. Its elasticity is outstanding, and because it is covered with strong, coarse fur, its defense is considerable. Its ability to block the cold is especially outstanding, so for wintertime travelers, it is the best armor." Option: Agility 2, Cold Resistance 20 Sharply Shinning Sword, enchanted, weapon type one-handed sword attack damage 8 to 12 durability 20/20 weight 15 usage restriction none a sword created by whetting the corroded sword to a keen edge. Although the durability has fallen because the edge was sharpened to great thinness, its sharpness is without peer. It is comfortable to use because of its light weight. It is better for a beginner to use than a long sword. Option: Attack speed +5 Of course, they fell a little short from the smithy's top leather armor and long sword. However, those items were nothing more than displays. If you considered the enormous sum of gold demanded as their prices, no matter how much a user saved money, they'd have to be at least level 20 to 25 to be able to finally buy those. On the other hand, Ark had been able to acquire enchanted equipment with options at level 13, he had truly struck it rich. He also had the inheritance from Granny Johansson and the money he'd earned from brokering the equipment repairs with users. He'd made 60 gold in just 25 days in Haroon village. Compared to the beginning, he had made great strides. Ark talked with all the people of Haroon village. He thought there might possibly be another hidden quest. However, there weren't any NPCs who gave him any more quests even when he asked a few times. If that was the case, then there wasn't a need for him to linger in the beginner village any longer. Ark quickly organized his gear and strode onwards to Jackson Castle in search of Viscount Haverstein. "Have all of the applicant reports come in?" "Yes, we are currently reading them." "Are there any guys that caught your interest?" "Quite a few." Kim Gwontae sorted through a few pages of the report and handed them to Ha Myung-woo. The applicants in Global EXO's recruitment exam submitted scheduled reports, which allowed the evaluators to clearly track the applicants' progress. As he glanced through the report, Ha Myung-woo asked with a surprised expression, "It's only been 20 days, but are there 20 users who are already at level 50? Compared to other games, it was 3 to 4 times harder to level up in New World. In other words, if they had been playing another game, they would have reached level 150 to 200 in just 20 days. It was an unprecedented speed. Naturally, it's a number that's impossible to reach by playing the game normally. Although they've written in the reports as having done it on their own strength, there seems to be an immense number of people who have supported them. Though it's not the method we wanted, do you think it will be okay? Didn't you predict this much from the beginning?" Ha Myung-woo replied airily, as if it wasn't a big deal. Since the very beginning of their plan to pick an employee from the game's result, they had predicted the troublesome collaboration to some extent. It was a test to enter the world-renowned corporation, Global EXO's. There were bound to be people who were pouring an outrageous sum of money into the game, and there would also be people who requested their family, relatives, and even their friends to mobilize and support them. In the end, the applicants who had been watching until now chose to use similar methods. If the applicants were that enthusiastic and absorbed, then it wasn't such a bad thing for Ha Myung-woo. Funding and making use of personal connections are also skills. That's why we allowed even the idiots who fake their resumes to participate. If mongrels like them cling more desperately, the exam standards are going to naturally rise. In a situation where we can't directly participate in the system, there's no better method than that. Are you considering accepting any of them? As if. Ha Myung-woo laughed as if he was telling him not to joke. We merely needed users we could control. How are the others? They're approximately level 30 to 40. It would be less if they used normal methods. And what about the ones you pulled out? Ha Myung-woo gestured at the reports piled up on one side of the table. Ah, those are the people who are playing the game with rather unique methods. Unique methods? Yes. Should I say they're stupid, or should I say they're brilliant? They're circulating in the lowest of the levels. In a sense, they have been taking full advantage of the system. Even among them, these fellows have caught my eye. Will you take a look? Kim Gwontae extended 2 reports. One of them was on an applicant named Sambara. The other was on Ark. It was Kim Hyun-woo's report. As he scanned through the reports, Ha Myung-woo shook his head and laughed. Both of them were still under level 20. What we want isn't a person who properly enjoys the game. We want a person who can properly utilize and cunningly move forward in the game. Isn't it true that levels aren't everything in New World? Of course. But their level can indicate and judge their skill. Well, that's true. If you want to properly throw into a game, then you've got to be smart. It's hard to say that a person who couldn't even get to level 20 in 20 days has a good head. Erase them from the consideration list. And didn't this one fake his resume? Is he eliminated after all? There's no way we can read all 2,000 reports each time they come in. We'll need to thin them out in the process. Still, we don't need to inform them of their disqualification right now. While we're testing, we need to be fair, after all. It's bothersome if curs like him get scared and pull out. I understand. The reports of Kwak Young and Kim Hyun-woo were thrown into the shredder. On the applicant list, disqualified was written in red letters by their names. For the past few days, your cheeks have been sunken in like a person who didn't sleep enough. Did something difficult happen? Well, why wouldn't it be difficult? His mom, who was looking at him pitiably, heaved a sigh. When she worried about him with her quavering voice, her pale white face, and thin vein, bony arms that were pierced with 3 to 4 needle drips, Hyun-woo's heart ached. Truthfully, her concerns weren't unfounded. After Hyun-woo connected to New World, he hadn't been able to sleep properly. The game is as important as my real life. I'm behind in comparison to the other applicants, and though I don't have a lot of time to concentrate on the game, I knew it was gonna be tough from the start. That's right. Like team leader said, if succeeding or failing the exam isn't simply based on level, even I might have a chance. As long as there's hope, I can't just dejectedly give up. Having made his resolution, Hyun-woo had only slept 3 hours a day and devoted himself to the game. And for the last few days, after he started to fight the demon mouse, he'd spent the nights with hardly a wink of sleep. Even this morning, he'd briefly slipped into a nap before his alarm went off and he hastily slapped some clothes on and left. With his haggard face and grubby clothes, he was definitely in bad shape. However, Hyun-woo answered with a falsely bright face. Nothing difficult happened. I'm sorry. I'm called a parent, but I'm just being baggage. I told you it's not like that. It's just that I've been playing around with my friends until late at night these days, so I kind of haven't gotten enough sleep. But if I wasn't like this, right now even university. Mother. Hyun-woo abruptly grasped his mother's hand and smiled. I'm really perfectly okay. Honestly, I like working a lot more than going to university. Work is fun, and my coworkers treat me well too. There are also people who always help me, too. There's no reason for you to worry, mother. Ah, there is one thing that's difficult. What is it? That I can't eat the mixed noodles, bibimbap, you make. You little. Saying such pointless words. It's the truth. That's the only food I really want to eat. Although I tried to imitate it, the taste wasn't right. So, get better quickly and make it for me, please. Okay. All right. Okay. Hyun-woo shot a wink at her and chattered, and finally his mother laughed. Although he had integrity, his personality wasn't charming. In the past, he wouldn't have even been able to imagine saying words like these. But somewhere along the line, in a way that was strange to even him, these kinds of words slowly came out. This was also one of the effects of playing New World. To think that I could use the experience from taking care of Granny Johansson like this. When Hyun-woo had taken care of Johansson in Haroon village, there had been things he'd naturally learned. At first, it had just been a quest that he'd taken while crying to himself to get to the next one. But as repeated the quest, he had realized something. The rewards correlated to how well Hyun-woo treated her. The better he did, the more the reward. The default reward was 1 silver, but there were cases when he received more than that if he poured all his heart into nursing her. The time it took was the same anyways, so it was much better if he could receive 1 more silver. After finding out about that, Hyun-woo was able to dive into the words and actions Johansson wanted in advance. What was fun was that his trained senses from the game could transfer to reality too. Although he couldn't use the nursing skill from the game to increase vigor and courage, just making his mother feel better was not a problem. It was a small, unnoticeable change, but it made his mother's expression brighten. Why wasn't I able to do something this simple for her in the past? With that alone, Hyun-woo felt that playing New World was worth it. Then I'll stop by again the morning after tomorrow. I'll leave the fruit here, so please eat them when you can. Hyun-woo put down the fruit basket and energetically turned around. After hearing from the doctor that fruits would help treatment, Hyun-woo always bought her a fruit basket once a week. Though it was the Hyun-woo who couldn't bear to buy himself 1 ramen, if it would help his mother recover, couldn't he buy her not just fruit, but wild ginseng? Hyun-woo dragged his exhausted, sleep-deprived body to the mart. After laboring for 6 hours a day while moving heavy crates here and there and stacking them, the monthly wage he received was 1,500,000 won, 1,500 US dollars. In addition, he earned 2 million won, 2,000 US dollars, from working 3 part-time jobs, each one 3 hours long. Global Exos paid their employees 1,500,000 won, 1,500 US dollars, a month. The amount Hyun-woo earned by working 15 hours a day was 5 million won, 5,000 US dollars, a month. With his income, he could barely cover his mother's hospital fees and living expenses, the interest on loans, and since he needed to repay the payments for her to be discharged, no matter how much he tightened his belt, he lived a continuously suffocating life. So, no matter how difficult it was or how much his body hurt, he could not stop working. Hyun-woo shook his head vigorously. Mother is suffering many times more than I am. Yeah, I can't say weak things and the like. After finally finishing a bout of work, Hyun-woo squeezed in between some boxes and briefly closed his eyes. The reason why he was able to endure with 1 hour of sleep a day was that he slept while riding the subway, or he snapped a little in his spare time at work. Of course, those sweet moments of respite were only possible thanks to his coworker Hae-sun's help. Appa, Appa. At the sound of someone shaking him awake, Hyun-woo sluggishly opened his eyes. Hae-sun was shaking him with an anxious look on her face. Huh? What's going on? Did the wares come in? A call came in saying they're coming in a little bit. The owner is gonna come down soon. Alright, I'd better wake up if I don't want to be nagged at. Hyun-woo muttered as he thoroughly stretched himself. Hae-sun asked with a worried look in her eyes. Appa, did you take on yet another part-time job? Huh? Nah. On the other hand, I've dropped a few of them. Then why are you drowsing like this whenever you can these days? Yeah, that's. Hyun-woo scratched his head and made a sheepish look. The truth is, lately I've been playing a game at home. Appa plays games too. What's this? In the past, there was a time when I played games like crazy. As soon as it was the weekend, if I clicked my mouse the night was spent, and if I drummed away at my keyboard it was already dawn. There are over 3 to 4 online games where I reached the max levels. In those days, he really didn't know how the days passed and was completely absorbed in the game. His parents were on the lenient side, so he didn't even have any memories of getting scolded for playing games. But as his life started to turn upside down, everything else had become insignificant. No matter how hard he tried to concentrate on his game, the burdensome reality got in the way. There hadn't been a game that engrossed him enough to let him forget reality. I'll probably never be able to comfortably play games again. That's what he had thought. But lately, those past sensations were reviving in Hyun-woo. He was so immersed in New World that he was able to forget his goal of playing the game to get employed by Global Exos. That's why his sleeping time had steadily dropped, and he was so exhausted that he could say his body and mind were running on empty fumes. It was to the point that he'd completely blanked out on even the report he remembered 2 days before the due date and hurriedly wrote one up and submitted it. Even so, the time he spent playing the game was truly enjoyable. And he wanted to go into the Global Exos that had created such a game. However, it was highly unlikely. Hyun-woo had learned less and had nothing compared to the other candidates. And he was definitely short on time. Although the competition ratio was 1 in 200, in reality Hyun-woo was up against 1,900 people. He could only conclude that there was a greater chance of rejection than acceptance. That's why Hyun-woo wanted to enjoy New World as much as he could. He had to return the 10 million won, 10,000 US dollars, unit when the test was over. If I return the unit, with my income, I probably won't be able to play it again. Even for the sake of playing New World, I want to get accepted. No, I will. I have to believe that I can. His apprehension from faking his resume still remained. But seeing as Global Exos hadn't noticed all this time, could he somehow fool them to the very end? He wanted to believe that he could. As Hae-sun watched Hyun-woo lost in thought, her eyes suddenly widened. Then what's the game Appa's been playing lately? Why are you asking that? Well, if it's fun I want to try too. You've played a game before? Of course. What was it? Well, what was it? The dancing one. Hae-sun mumbled with a frown. This game is totally different game from those. And even if you know what it is, it's too much for you to play. TCH, what exactly is it to make you say that? It's called New World, it came out recently. And New World. Hae-sun's eyes got round. You know it. Of course. That is, you're right. I saw it in a newspaper once. But doesn't it take a huge amount of money to play that game? Because of that unit or whatever. Somehow or another, I got to play it for free. Somehow or another. I can't really explain it to you in detail. Ah, I heard there are game rooms where units are installed nowadays. The fees are a little expensive, but if you have the chance, try it once. Just trying it once is going to be better than having me explain it 100 times. Then, a truck topped to the brim with wares entered the warehouse, and Hyun-woo quickly ran towards it with a loading cart. Hai-sun watched Hyun-woo's back and nodded her head as if she had made some kind of resolution. He said it was New World, huh? New World, the continent where sunlight like peace can be obtained through the blessings of God. However, the trails left behind by history were carved with blood and violence. There had been a turbulent period in the history of New World, so far past that no one could even recall. Thousands of races broke off into various factions, creating endless wars. Blood was washed away with more blood, corpses were blanketed with more corpses. What ended this tumultuous era was not a force of righteousness. It was wickedly evil beyond compare. The devil incarnate did not differentiate between races and attacked everyone. With immense strength, it dyed the continent in black blood. All the races were like newborn babies before the devil incarnate. They stilled their breaths and trembled at the chaos and horror. It was the start of the so-called Dark Century. But it is the law of the world that as the darkness deepens, a more brilliant light will arise. So, when the devil incarnate's war situation reached its climax, there were those who broke free with light and rose. The 7 heroes whose names were left in history's path. 3 of them were human, and the others were dwarf, elf, orc, and the meow hero they called Mabon. At the center of the continent, they formed a strong alliance. Then the sound of moaning changed to shouts of victory. One by one, as they carved the records of great wars, the 7 heroes were finally able to defeat the devil incarnate. With the disappearance of the devil incarnate, the 7 heroes spoke of what they desired amongst themselves. I desire spacious and fertile earth. The 3 human heroes received 3 kingdoms on New World. I desire a forest overflowing with life. For me a hot fire and rock strength. A damp bog and barren wilderness for me. The elf received rights to the forest, the dwarf the underground, and the orc the wasteland. Their eyes looked toward Hero Mabon. Hero Mabon spoke with a bitter smile. I wish to watch over the blood vow that you made in your hearts. That vow will be kept. Then that is enough. Hero Mabon spoke those words and disappeared. The kingdoms the 6 heroes erected became the present New World. And for over 200 years, New World reached its golden age and prospered. But this time was not only prosperous. Following the flow of time, the pledge of friendship the 6 heroes had shared slowly but surely faded away. 200 years was plenty of time to forget the horror and honors of the past. The vow splintered. And the crack was largely spreading in a way that anyone could see. This time should I try putting this one in? Ark pushed the herb he'd been holding into the pot. Then the liquid within the pot turned reddish and shortly firmed up like pudding. After staring at the pudding with a serious expression, he clenched his eyes shut and spooned in the pudding. The feeling of his weak stomach becoming completely full was accompanied by a surge of energy. You have created nutritious jelly with survival cooking. Satiety has been filled to 100% and within 10 seconds 200 health will be restored. For 10 minutes strength and stamina increase by 2. Wisdom and intelligence are reduced by 2. Nice, it's a success this time. Ark blew out a sigh of relief and stored the pudding in his bag. After his departure from Haroon village, Ark had purposely left the road and diverged into the forest. After actually leaving the village, the users who went to Jackson Castle were mostly at about level 15. Of course, if you just looked at his stats, Ark was also in a state of being over level 10. Still, being at a lower level than others made him feel uneasy. The level was an absolute number in the game. That his level was falling meant that he was that much weaker. That's why he was in the process of completely wiping out any wild dogs and wolves he saw as he cut through the forest. When he killed over 200 wild dogs and wolves like that, Ark reached level 16. Thanks to that, his sword and armor transformed to a ragged mess, which would crumble if he touched them. I should learn the repair skill when I arrive at Jackson Castle. If the precious equipment he struggled to obtain had cracked, he wouldn't even be able to sleep for a few days. Ark changed his equipment to leather clothing for the time being and concentrated on gathering. He intended to use this chance to raise his survival cooking level as well. At first, he thought about erasing the skill after seeing the creation of a ridiculous food and learning ordinary cooking, but hunting the demon mouse had enlightened him of the usefulness of survival cooking. I can use it whether it's poison or food. But even though he resolved himself and tried to raise it, it wasn't easy. Survival cooking was not regular cooking. He couldn't simply mix any ingredients he wanted to create results. When the combination didn't match at all, with an explosion the ingredients would all go to waste. At last, after over 100 attempts, Ark had successfully made 15 dishes, including fragrant poison soup. Out of those, the only ones worth using were Howling Seasoned Chili, Refreshing Herb Tea, and the recent success Nutritional Jelly. The Howling Seasoned Chilies was an enormously strong-tasting food that had the effect of temporarily increasing strength by 10. But after that effect disappeared, the user was plunged into a state of confusion for several minutes, so it was an incomparably dangerous food. After eating this, Ark had fought 5 wolves and had almost died. The Refreshing Herb Tea was a tea that restored mana. It was incredibly delicious, and Ark frequently made and drank it while on his journey. So, as he did the things he'd been unable to do until now because he'd been fighting mice, his skill rose by a lot, and he even earned 2 new skills. Passive skill: Sword Mastery, Beginner, 26 out of 100, you do not receive weapon penalties even if you use a sword. Hand-to-hand Combat, Beginner, 24 out of 100, whenever you fight barehanded, your attack power, accuracy, and evasion are increased. Survival Cooking, Beginner, 22 out of 100, you can make unidentified dishes with ingredients obtained from nature. Undying Will, Beginner, 27 out of 100, when in critical condition, your attack power, critical hit chance, and ability to recover are increased. Foraging, Beginner, 29 out of 100, food ingredients from nature can be gathered. Active Skill: Nursing, Beginner, 21 out of 100, gives hope, energy, and courage to patients. Mana Consumption 10. Spirit of the Cat, Intermediate, 103/300, plants horror in mice and small monsters, sealing off their movements, attack power, defense, and morale are sharply decreased. Mana Consumption 100. Ingredient Identification, Beginner, passive, can confirm the basic effects of food ingredients that you obtain from the foraging skill. Because your knowledge in food ingredients has risen, when you forage you will no longer sustain damage from ingredients. Indomitable Body, Beginner, passive, even if you confront fairly dangerous situations, you are granted the fortitude to endure them. Your excellent defense will shine more brightly in difficult situations. Emergency Defense, evasion of fatal blows increased by 30%. Recovery ability increased by 5%. The ingredient identification seemed to be a skill that added to survival cooking. In any case, knowing whether the harvested ingredient was poisonous or not was a good thing, because then he'd be able to decrease the probability of failure a little. The truly unexpected skill was Indomitable Body. After squeezing his eyes shut and eating every 100+ dish he'd made with survival cooking, the Indomitable Body skill had naturally formed. For that kind of a skill to form meant that survival cooking was really dangerous. Ark was satisfied with that much. Now that the ingredients are all used up, shall I go? Ark shouldered his bag and began to walk again. Though it was dawn in reality, in New World it was morning. As he hefted his bag and walked through the forest, a cool wind tickled his face. The smell of grass permeated his nostrils and washed clean his chest. Though he had thought and marveled about it many times, New World was beyond the classification of a normal game after all. As its name proclaimed, New World was literally a new world. But what Ark had experienced was still less than 1 out of 100 of New World. Ark keenly realized this truth after he crossed a hill. Oh! His exclamation naturally burst out. Endless unfurled plains before a towering citadel city that rose into the sky. The truth that a building made of black stones could be so beautiful was simply shocking. But the Haroon Village NPCs had said that Jackson Castle was not such a big city in New World. It's unbelievable, but that must mean that there are cities that are bigger and more awesome than this. After thinking that thought, his heart fluttered like a youth's. Anyway, he'd finally parted from the beginner area and had arrived at the real meaning of a city. When he went into the castle, it wasn't as beautiful as he'd thought from what he'd seen outside. But the castle was overflowing with vitality. Now when it came to writing someone off as a beginner from the people, there were users at level 50 to 60, and the streets that couldn't be compared to the ones in Haroon Village were chock full of crowds. The reason was that there were numerous unexplored dungeons left in the area around Jackson Castle. For those who'd enjoy warmth and coziness, please come to Hades Guild. If you're a valiant warrior who wants to experience the battlefield, to Black Axe Guild. The best priced rods, selling at the minimum price. This Nook stall. Those who need a mercenary, please contact me. He heard shouts from every direction. The bulletin boards laid on every street corner publicized guilds and shops, and the boards were pasted full of flyers for getting parties. With stalls covered with items strewn about on the ground, it wasn't even easy for people to walk. Having spent over 20 days in the carefree and quiet Haroon Village, Ark had unintentionally become a hick and could not adapt easily. Besides the unexplored dungeons, what made Jackson Castle this bustling was that the NPCs related to job changing and the NPCs associated with guilds were all gathered here. The guilds were an extremely important element in the game. If many beginners gathered, they could even gain more information, and they were very helpful when trying to accomplish difficult requests. That's why every guild representative's eyes were lit up in order to procure even just one more high-level user. But Ark had no thoughts of joining a guild. The first reason was his deep-rooted mistrust of users. The second was that even if he sometimes forgot, his motivation for playing the game was different from other users. To Ark, New World wasn't simply a game, but an employment exam. It'd be tough to needlessly join a guild and waste time doing useless things. What Ark was interested in was the job change possible from level 15. It was the biggest reason why users flocked to Jackson Castle after reaching level 15. In New World, there were 12 broad classes of jobs. Warrior, archer, magician, thief, priest, and so on, and if you went into details there were several branches included in each class of job. So, one would do 2, up to 3 job changes. Status. Character name Ark race human alignment none fame 150 level 16 profession none title mouse hunter health 360 mana 100 strength 67 agility 77 plus 2 stamina 67 wisdom 16 intelligence 17 luck 17 equipment effects sharply shining sword attack speed plus 5 black bear mouse leather armor agility plus 2 cold resistance plus 20 though they were meager stats, if meager at all, but considering that he was level 16, they were at a decent level. If you just looked at his stats, his wisdom and intelligence were too low for him to choose a profession in the magic division. The jobs that matched him were combat-related. Up until now Ark had mostly done combat, so he'd unconsciously poured all his stats in strength, agility, and stamina. Should I just use this chance to job change to a warrior? Even if they were the same level 15, the difference between a character that had job changed and one that hadn't was enormous. If he changes profession, he would learn new skills that were particular to the job, and a lot of bonus stats would be added. In addition, if he did the job change quest, he would acquire the matching branch of that profession. It was truly like turning over a new leaf. But Ark shook his head. I don't even know the job characteristics properly yet. Ark hadn't seen any scenes of job-changed users fighting yet. Although he could basically see the characteristics of the classified jobs just by looking at their names, there were slight differences between each game. What skills would form, what skills he couldn't learn if the job changed, he had to meticulously consider them and make a decision. It wasn't a matter he could just choose based on his mood without personally experiencing them. In New World, Ark is my one and only alter ego. I've goanna choose carefully. If it was another game, he could job change and if he didn't like it, he could just raise a new one. But there was only one chance to choose in New World. There could be no limit to his cautiousness. Okay, for now I'll hunt with Jackson Castle as my base and watch job-changed users. Because right now I've got other things to do too. Ark opened his bag and looked over the slate with an affectionate glance. It was the mysterious slate that the demon mouse had watched over. When Ark looked at the slate, he sank into a feeling of delight. Ark had earned many benefits simply from the journey to find this slate. He'd earned 12 bonus stats, and he'd learned survival cooking for free. On top of that, he'd earned 2 of the enchanted equips that were difficult to see at his level. It was enjoyable to simply entertain the thoughts of what other benefits this linked quest might bring him. For that I'll have to meet Viscount Haverstein first. Ark went and found the Lord's castle with hurried steps. What do you need? As he'd been wandering about as a hillbilly wrapped in some kind of animal leather, the guard glared at him. Well, it was a virtual reality game, so he'd expected that response. I have come to meet Viscount Haverstein. What? You mean the Lord? Yes, if you show him this, he will probably meet with me. Ark pulled out the parchment he'd discovered in the cave. The guard shot him a doubtful glance and went into the castle. After about 10 minutes had passed, he ran back outside along with a man. He was a middle-aged knight with a bushy bearded face. Seeing as he was wearing modest chain mail, it looked like he wasn't Viscount Haverstein. The middle-aged knight introduced himself as Cross, the general of defense in charge of the castle's guards. Once Ark also introduced himself simply, Cross asked with an urgent voice. All right, Ark. Were you the one who discovered this parchment? Yes. Did you by any chance discover some strange item near the place where the parchment was? I discovered it. Ark quickly took out the slate from his bag and showed it to Cross. Cross blew out the breath he'd been holding. I don't know whether I should call this the guidance of God, or the devil's prank. What do you mean? That slate is an item Viscount Haverstein has been searching for a long time. However, none of the people he sent to find the slate have returned. What is this slate for? I don't know the details either. I only know that it's connected to the ruins that were discovered near this territory. As the years passed and its whereabouts couldn't be found, Viscount Haverstein gave up on the slate in the end. And then he struck off for the ruins while leading the Slighted Knights. But for the slate to appear after the Viscount left. Cross clasped Ark's hand tightly and requested. If it's okay, can't you personally deliver the slate to the Viscount? If you hurry and follow him now, you might be able to catch the Viscount before he arrives at the ruins. At the same time, the quest name was updated to Secret of the Slate equals Secret of the Slate 2. The content was about meeting Haverstein, who had left for the ruins that held a connection to the slate. Bahaha, this is it. I've been waiting for something like this. As a spark fizzed into Ark's mind, the formula of quest plus dungeon equals huge treasure arose. There was no reason to hesitate. Ark quickly nodded. Cross gave him a horse and 2 soldiers. No matter how busy he was, he had to take care of some business before he left. Ark found the blacksmith, had all his equipment repaired, and mounted the horse. But it was impossible for Ark, who organized a mart warehouse in reality, to have ever ridden a horse. Thinking since it's a game, it should work out somehow, was a mistake. Before he was able to go a few kilometers, he rolled and fell off the horse 5 times. He paled beside the soldiers, who held the reins of Ark's horse for him. Put your strength in your thighs and lay flat on the back of your horse. We shall guide the horse. Can't we rest a little before we go? If we were to follow and catch the Viscount before he arrives at the ruins, there is not a moment to be lost. Giddy up. Damn it, I'm saying I'll die before we arrive. Though his stomach churned, there was nothing good about antagonizing the NPCs who were affiliated with the Lord's castle. Despite that, for the sake of the new skill he had learned, he had to endure. Riding skill has risen by 3. Horse riding is a little bit easier. The riding skill that formed when he was about to hurl went up by 3 when the urge to spring away penetrated his lower back and he desperately restrained himself. After that, Ark was able to straighten his back and hold the reins himself. And so, after a day and a night of spurring the horses on like crazy, the hazy shape of the ruins appeared. Thankfully it seemed like they weren't late, as the sight of the Slighted Knights gathered at the ruin entrance came into view. Ark and the soldiers he'd come together with got off their horses and ran over. My lord, we found the slate. What? The person who turned his head was a noble of approximately 60 years of age. His coarse, white hair fell to his shoulders, and his face looked blue from lack of oxygenation. But his eyes shined with a penetrating light. This was precisely Viscount Haverstein. With a dignified gait, he approached Arkansas. Are you the traveler who brought the slate? Can you show me? Yes. There is no doubt. This is exactly the slate I was looking for. After Ark pulled out the slate for him, Haverstein looked over it with squinted, trembling eyes for a long while. He needed a very long time before he was able to turn his eyes on Ark again. You probably cannot even imagine what a huge help your good deed has become for me. The rule is that good deeds have a price. Therefore, I, Haverstein, have a responsibility to reward your pains. Say what you desire. If it is the request of a man of your merit, I will listen to anything. Starlight rustled and fell from Ark's pupils. He could finally receive the reward he'd waited and waited for. And that he would listen to anything. Should I ask for a magic item? Or should I ask for money? As Ark agonized over this and that, he belatedly discovered something strange. Then he noticed the cleverly hidden trap in the words of Haverstein's quest. It's a request appropriate of my merit. Thinking carefully about it, it was a peerlessly ambiguous statement. Though Haverstein had said anything, the condition, appropriate of merit, was attached. In the end that meant there was an upper limit. But since the merit wasn't simply put out in numbers, he couldn't know what the limit was. Then what method could he use to guess the upper limit? It's the difficulty. Ark opened the quest window and checked it. The difficulty was G. From what he'd experienced so far, this kind of difficulty would only earn him a reward of 1 gold at most, or a follow-up item. Is that all I can earn with this quest? His feeling of excitement disappeared and was replaced by dismay. To obtain the slate, he'd had to kill hundreds of mice and defeat the demon mouse. He'd raced the horse to meet Haverstein to the point where his back had almost broken. But the reward was just 1 gold. Then yet another question rose in Ark's mind. Is pulling out this slate truly the end? But then why did the General of Defense send me all the way here? He could have just used the soldiers. And the quest says to meet Haverstein, but there's nothing written about giving him the slate. That's right, this is a branched quest. A branched quest was one that changed based on the user's choice. At the end of many inferences, Ark was sure that this was a branched quest. A different quest related to the slate. In other words, the way to obtain the real reward that Ark wanted was different. Ark suddenly raised his head and replied. What I desire is to go into the ruins with the Viscount. What? You can't do that. Why do you say that? Since I brought the slate that's related to the ruins, I think I'm qualified enough. Did the Viscount not promise a reward appropriate for my merits after all? Do you not know? I'm saying this for your own good. That ruin is not just a commonplace dungeon. This is the lair where the devil incarnate is holed up in. I can't drag in a civilian like you inside that place. Are you breaking the promise that you yourself made? Ark pressed Haverstein with a sharp voice. One should always maintain a good relationship with the NPCs. That was Ark's ironbound principle. But it was a different matter if there was an even greater profit on the line. There were many ways to re-raise intimacy that had fallen, but there were no ways to get back a quest item that he'd failed to hold onto. Whether the NPC was a lord or a viscount, if it was necessary, he would even go into a head-on clash to obtain the profit. You're really, cough. Haverstein, who had been glaring at Ark, suddenly fell to one knee as he vomited blood. My lord. The soldiers who'd been in the area urgently rushed over. But there was a person who rushed and helped Haverstein quicker than they. It was Arkansas. Please leave him to me. I have a lot of experience in taking care of patients. As he quickly used the nursing skill, the color returned to Haverstein's face. Ark spoke as he furtively smiled. You seem deeply ill. To explore the ruins with a body like this, and isn't it true that there aren't any people here who know how to take care of a patient? I don't need a caretaker or whatever. Cough. No, I can see the state of a patient. You will not be able to walk, let alone swing a sword, like this. Surely you do not wish to become baggage to your subordinates by flaunting your pride. How, however? Please give me permission to nurse you, my lord. No, you must do so. I too am merely a caretaker. I cannot just leave a patient and walk away. Ark spoke with a resolute expression. Haverstein heaved a sigh. It was a sigh acknowledging his defeat. When the ringing sound of drumbeats followed, Ark was sure that his choice had been the right one. Quest has been updated. Secret of the Slate 2 equals Secret of the Slate 3. You must explore the ruin with Viscount Haverstein to uncover the secret of the slate. Term for quest failure: if Viscount Haverstein dies, you will automatically lose the quest. Difficulty, +E, attack, sweep away the accursed monsters. Over 50 Sylphid knights stampeded and bravely swung swords and maces. The gargoyles and goblins obstructing their way jumped out, explosively. Then, in the hands of the magicians, flames burst out and turned the passageway into an inferno. The goblins swallowed in the path of fire let out horrible shrieks and crawled out, but what was waiting for them was a baptism of swords and maces. Clearing scores of monsters didn't even take 10 minutes. Ark was watching the battle with surprised eyes. Strong. 2 days had passed since they had entered the ruin. The insides of the ruin were tangled with complicated, maze-like paths, so it was impossible to distinguish the path, or be aware of the direction. And every time they went around a corner, an incredible number of monsters charged at them. However, they were no match for the Sylphid knights. They were knights that the Lord had personally led here. Even their equipment was on a different level from ordinary soldiers. They were knights armed with shining armor and weapons. And their related skills must be at an extremely high level, because they were able to defend every attack with their shields, and whenever they swung their swords, fatal blows were dealt. It was the first time he'd seen an NPC's battle. The high level was to the point where he went and lost his confidence. After finishing a bout of fighting, a cross mark appeared above the heads of the knights. It was a sign that indicated their level up. Just how much of a level do those guys have? Levels existed for NPCs, too. Of course, if they won many fights, their level would go up. However, the NPCs themselves didn't know about the concept of levels. If you asked them what their level was, they would return the question, asking what that was. And if you tried to explain it in detail, they would suddenly get mad. In New World, the vocabulary level, skill, and stats were foreign to them. In other words, those were just users' terms. Even magic or skills that let them peek at someone's information window didn't get through to the NPCs. Therefore, there was no way to confirm it, but it was definite that they were at a much higher level than Arkansas. Anyways, if I stay with them there should be no risk of death. The updated Secret of the Slate quest's difficulty was a staggering +E. It was a quest at a level where it'd be impossible to solve it by himself, no matter what he did. But if he did it with the Sylphid Knights, it didn't even look like it'd be that difficult. The problem was the condition of Haverstein's survival. After they entered the ruin, Haverstein's health became increasingly weak. Ark, who had learned the nursing skill, could tell that he didn't have much life left. If, by any chance, Haverstein died before the completion of the quest would end in a failure and the Sylphid Knights would return to Jackson Castle. That was the reason why a quest where he didn't even need to personally fight had a difficulty of +E. No matter what happens, I have to save him until the quest is resolved. TCH, what a pain. The sight of Haverstein coughing beside him filled him with annoyance. If the quest didn't have such a condition, he wouldn't give a damn if Haverstein died or not. More importantly, he had to participate in the fight and hit the monsters that looked like crammed up wads of experience at least once. Even those strong knights were leveling up without rest. At his level, if he was fortunate enough to defeat one or two of the monsters, he'd probably be able to garner quite a lot of experience. However, he couldn't afford to do that. If he didn't stand by and watch over Haverstein, who was deteriorating by the minute, there was no knowing what sudden result might occur. Cough, cough. You are okay. Illness comes first from the mind. If you firmly steel your heart, you can overcome any disease. Have courage. You can't lose hope. As he prattled on about things he didn't even believe in, he spewed the nursing skill and Haverstein's face became a little brighter. You have my thanks. If I listen to your words, my strength rises as if it's really easing the disease. However, I am aware that no matter how much I steel my mind, there's no hope for my life. What are you saying? No, it's the truth. Because my disease did not come first from the mind. Are you saying that you know about the disease? Do you know why I've come here leading the knights with a body like this? Haverstein's clouded gaze swept across the dreary ruin. Because it's here, the cursed devil killed my father and planted the disease in me. Devil. Can you please tell me in more detail? I may as well. Since you've already stepped foot in this place, knowing this won't be bad. Truthfully, a long time ago there was a terrible calamity that befell Jackson Castle. It buried the land in disease and famine. Are you saying that was the devil's doing? Yes. It was the doing of this malicious devil that came from a faraway continent. My ancestors of the Jackson family, which came to know of this truth, naturally rallied soldiers and fought with the devil. But with only the final blow remaining, the devil escaped, and since then the Jackson family has suffered from the devil's curse. All the descendants of the Jackson family eventually die of a curse that brought about a terminal illness once they turn 20. What? But the Viscount is. That my life is still bound to me is thanks to Father. Haverstein tightly clutched the silver necklace that fell to his chest. As the other ancestors did, Father also strove to release the family's curse. And then in the same year when I was born, he finally found out that the devil that had fled that time was hiding in this ruin. If that devil is killed, then the curse will end. But the place where that devil was hiding was firmly locked by an ancient force. The slate that you brought is precisely the key to opening that room. At the end of a long effort, his father had finally laid hands on the slate. Then, as Haverstein was doing now, he had led soldiers and searched for the devil. Haverstein stared blankly at the Sylphid Knights as if meaning to see his father's appearance from that time among them. First, I listened to the soldiers who were in the verge of death. They said a long and lengthy fight had occurred. In the end, it resulted in Father's defeat. But Father, using the last of his strength, gave the devil a large wound. Thanks to that the curse has weakened, and I was able to live to this age. So that means that the Viscount is suffering from the disease because that malicious devil has regained its strength. You're right. And since a few years ago, traces of the curse have even appeared on my now 15-year-old son. The devil's strength has become stronger. But the slate had already disappeared with my father's death. For the last 3 years I tried to find the slate, but to no avail. In that time my body has become exhausted and thin, like this. Having lost the time to wait any longer, I went to battle to destroy the door with sheer force and punish the devil. If the devil is killed, will the Viscount's disease also be cured? Haverstein shook his head. No, it's already too late for me. Now, even if I killed the devil I cannot live on. However, I cannot allow my son to meet the same fate as I. After all, my father was also in the same situation as I, and fought the devil for my sake. This time, it is my turn to do for my son, as my father has done for me. And I believe that I can succeed. That you brought the slate here, is without a doubt, a revelation from God. Ark was moved to tears. A father for the sake of his son, and the son for the sake of his son, was burning away the last of his life. Of course, they were NPCs. Though they looked like people, they weren't. Within that too realistic face there was electricity that flowed along electric wires. Despite that, the light with which Haverstein looked at Ark was sincere. That he himself was dying, and for his son he would throw away his life, he truly thought that way. Most NPCs are similar in that sense. Although there were bad people and good people here in this world as there are in the real world, at the very least, people here don't play with others' sincere feelings through cunning lies. That was the difference between an NPC and a user. The Viscount's wish will definitely come true. Thank you. Haverstein fell asleep with a more comforted face. After that, Ark took care of Haverstein with all his sincerity. A father who would throw down everything for the sake of his son. Though it was incredibly embarrassing, Ark could feel the presence of his own father in Haverstein. Meanwhile, heartfelt sympathy formed towards Haverstein. He had to help Haverstein for the quest anyways. If it was a done deal, wouldn't it be better to do it sincerely? When a day had passed like that, Ark received a message he hadn't even imagined. Of the skills Ark had learned, nursing had the slowest growth. Although he'd nursed Johansson about 10 times, the skill points had been at a mere 20. Even after the nursing he'd done for Haverstein up until now, it was at 30. But then it suddenly started swiftly going up, and in a moment, it had reached intermediate level. Through care imbued with sincerity, the nursing skill level has gone up. Nursing, intermediate, active can instill life by making the patient's body and soul more comfortable with increasingly proficient skillfulness. Used on a patient, vigor and courage are increased by 40%. Mana consumption, 10 * intermediate nursing bonus effect, nurse's soul can sincerely pray for the patient and grant the effect of a minor blessing. All stats are slightly increased, and through devout piety, resistance to curses related to the mind will form. Ark's mouth fell open. It wasn't because the skill went up, but because of the reason. Does that mean it knows that I treated Viscount Haverstein with sincerity? The sudden, rapid growth of the skill had happened, since Ark had started to sincerely worry about Haverstein. Then didn't that mean that Ark's change in attitude influenced the growth of the skill? Of course, it wasn't something that was physically impossible. New World was a system that scanned the brain and controlled the character with the user's brain waves. Emotion was, in the end, a brain wave. It was possible for the system to understand changes in emotion. But for even that part to influence the growth of skill. Stating that was simple. Whether it's interaction with an NPC or learning a skill, the effect is maximized if you pour your sincerity. It was a principle that was so natural in reality. But who would have thought to apply such a principle even in a game? It was shocking technological prowess, and a shocking discovery. By the mistake in Haroon Village, Ark was still in a state that fell far short of the other applicants. Even though he'd received a bonus of 12 points thanks to his special title, making up for half a month of difference in progress was difficult. Though it'd be nice if they would take a nap like the story of the rabbit and turtle, it was best not to expect that. But now it seemed like he could find the way to narrow that difference. There are still many unidentified systems in New World. If I find out about all of them, catching up to them isn't just a long-shot dream. That's right, the answer was right in front of me all along. Anyways, the difference from users that started at the same time is that and only that. If I'm to get ahead of the others, then I can't just follow what the others are doing. He saw a found new hope. Afterward, Haverstein vomited blood more frequently. As his spark of life continued to flicker out, his health deteriorated to the point where he could not recognize anyone. Every time that happened, Ark used his intermediate nursing skill and forcefully held his life in place. For the completion of the quest, for the growth of the skill, and for this unfortunate NPC's small wish. We have finally arrived. A light of emotion rose on Haverstein's ashen face. It had been 5 days since they had entered the ruins. The group had finally arrived at the destination. A massive stone door engraved with complicated patterns. The devil they were searching for was hiding behind this door. The stone door that seemingly emitted a dismal aura, had a space on one side that was big enough to fit the slate. Haverstein looked toward Ark and nodded his head. With a strained expression, Ark walked up to the stone door and pressed the slate in. Then the ruins rumbled as the stone gate slowly parted. Everyone prepares for battle, we will enter as we protect the Viscount. Yes. A space that was entirely different from the interior of the ruin appeared. Uneven stone walls, and the ceiling was studded with stalactites like a demon's fangs. It was a colossal hall made by the strength of Mother Nature. It happened when night stayed vigilant on all sides and arrived at the center of the hall. Boss monster Twisted Dream Weaver Deborah has appeared. The devil has appeared. Ark shouted in surprise. At the same time, from the opposite entrance a black aura spewed out. Having received Ark's warning, the knights hastily fumbled to raise their shields, but the enormous shock blew away 3 to 4 people. Mayflies without fearful heads have crawled in to die. Within the dark, the sight of a huge being that looked to be a good 10 meters came into view. With armor of darkness and an enormous sword, the blood-red cape on its back fluttered as it emitted a dismal aura. Deborah's body twisted like a whirlwind, and upon coming in contact with the black aura, the brave knights fell into panic. It's Deborah. Twisted Dream Weaver Deborah of horror. Do not be afraid, this bastard is just the cowardly monster that was coiled up and hiding within the stone door. Haverstein squeezed out his vigor and shouted. Only then did the knights snap back to attention and rush toward Deborah. Foolish newborn pups. Deep blue sparks flew out every time Deborah opened its mouth. It swung the length of the enormously large sword. With one blow, 3 to 4 soldiers were shattered as they were blown away. The Sylphid knights that had shown their unbeatable strength as they had crossed through the ruin were no match for Deborah. The deep blue sparks that spewed from its mouth melted their armor, and as the sword flew down in succession, the knights collapsed with 1-2 wounds. But the Sylphid knights didn't yield and endlessly besieged Deborah with a barrage of swords. The surrounding magicians on the outskirts also threw lightning and flames. At the consecutive, bursting flashes, Deborah must have taken a blow, because it staggered. Today is the end of you. One of the magicians hollered as he tore in with a skill combo of penetrate. Then, a red light enveloped Deborah and a health number cut in, about half appeared above its head. The knight's morale suddenly rose. The bastard doesn't even have half its health left. The time is now, finish it off. You bastards. Deborah's eyes flashed and a black aura surged out. Wrapped in the aura, the knights put on vacant expressions like they were somehow bewitched people, and then suddenly began to brawl amongst themselves. It's bewitching magic. Magicians. Yes. The magicians, who were outside the range of the aura, quickly uttered an incantation. Resistance spell, cleanse spell, strengthening willpower and other spells unfurled in the area. In spite of that, the knights were unable to shake off the bewitchment and floundered. Rather, the situation became more serious and 3 to 4 of them were felled by the swords of their friends. Embarrassment spread over the magicians' faces. The spells aren't dispelling it. Everyone please calm down, no matter who our opponent is, we will surely be victorious. In the moment of the desperate situation, Ark's voice cried out into the hall. The pupils of the bewitched knights gradually focused and they suddenly came to. It was the power of the nursing skill. Even when the fight first started, there had been nothing Ark could do. It was Deborah's attack, which could take out a 2 or 3 knights, and got it out of critical condition. If the level 16 Ark was to get grazed it, he would definitely fall into critical condition. All he could do was to nurse Haverstein from the back. But the situation changed as the bewitched knights brawled amongst themselves and suffered wounds. Because they weren't simple knights and were able to do a lot of damage to each other, they had become Ark's patients. When he used the nursing skill on a patient, the intermediate special effect, minor blessing, was granted. Thanks to that, they were able to resist the bewitchment, which was a curse of the mind, and shake it off. Not just that, but a bonus of vigor and courage 40%, and +3 to all stats. Of course, the knight's attack and defense power increased, and the magician's casting speed became faster. My strength is surging. We can win. Down with Deborah. The knights cheered and with a rush they swarmed and swung their swords. Deborah erupted with a howl of fury but there was nothing it could do. That was because Ark was not letting the soldiers rest. Please hurry and stand. Victory is right in front of you. Even though it's the devil, everyone's fighting spirit must not topple. Through unbreakable fighting spirit and unyielding courage, you will undoubtedly become heroes written in history. My stamina has hit the bottom. Let me rest a little. Get out there and fight. Your bravery will carry us to victory. Energy is surging. Come at me, devil. As Ark's voice rang out, the knights that had fallen over one after another sprang to their feet and swung their swords. Abruptly, as the zombie-like knights returned to the fight, Deborah's life quickly dropped. When it plummeted to 1 out of 10, it fell to 1 knee. Then Haverstein, who had been directing the knights, climbed atop Deborah's body and thrusted his sword toward its throat. Die, devil. Suddenly Deborah stretched its arm and seized Haverstein's throat. Was the suffering good? Deborah slowly raised its body. Screams of disbelief burst out from the surrounding knights. Life, it's life. Oh my God, does that mean this bastard is immortal? Deborah's cape fluttered as it twirled its body and its life was restored to 100%. Ark flung himself through the disconcerted knights. Viscount. Dying was no longer the problem. If Haverstein died, the quest was a failure. To come all the way here in the quest is a failure. No way. As Ark ran in, Deborah swung its sword. It was an attack Ark had predicted. Ark quickly unleashed hand-to-hand combat, and evaded. Then he pulled the sword aside and struck the bastard's hand with all his might. A fatal blow exploded and Deborah lost hold of Haverstein. Ark caught him and urgently moved back. You dare. With a furious shout, Deborah ran at him. Look at that. That stranger is fighting for the Viscount with his life on the line. Everyone protects the stranger. The knights, motivated by Ark's action, stampeded forward. But now, no matter how much they struck out with their swords, Deborah's life did not decrease. In other words, it was immortal. Deborah didn't even concern itself with their attacks and strode forth, swinging its sword like lightning. Ark hastily stood in front of Haverstein and raised his sword. Bam! With a heavy shock his life was cut to at least half. Holy shit, if I get hit one more time it's over. His eyesight blurred. In that moment the sword went up again and fell with a force that split the air. No. Everyone concentrates their magic power. Warp. The magicians concentrated their magic power on Ark and Haverstein. The magic to warp another person was an advanced 7-circle spell. It wasn't a spell that these 4 to 5 circle magicians could produce. But as 5 magicians integrated their magic power with willpower exchange, the 7-circle spell was completed. With a flash, Ark and Haverstein were transported somewhere. Deborah's sword struck the floor right after that.